Central banks around the world print currency out of thin air in order to support the economy, or at least that's what they say. But right now, these central banks are losing control as the economies around the world are dying. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Let's get into a bit of information here. The first one I want to discuss is the petrodollar exports to be negative in 2014 for the first time in 18 years. That is an extremely important piece of information here. The chart is out of BNP Paribas, but the information comes from Reuters here. But I just wanted to explain to you how the petrodollar is so important to the US right now. Many don't know, but essentially what happened is a deal was set up many years ago for Saudi Arabia to trade its oil exclusively in US dollars in exchange for a protection of their oil fields. Just like any other mafia, you set up these protective barriers, so-called protective barriers for your clients, and then you will make sure that nothing bad happens. Of course, we all know what's going on there, but regardless, if the petrodollar loses its strength, this means one of the possible catalysts for a destruction of the US dollar hegemony. And people will say, no, this is impossible, this is not going to happen, but we can see right here the weakening of the US dollar in one way. Of course, when you rate one currency versus another, you could say, look how strong the US dollar is right now. It's up against all of these other currencies, the Ukrainian currency, you look at it against the yen, you look at it against all these other currencies, and yes, it's doing well, absolutely. But look at it against real goods and you see a very different story. If you can tell me that your food prices have been declining, please let me know what area of the world you're from, because we all need to move there. That's the way this works. You look at a devaluation of currencies worldwide, they're all in a race to the bottom. We've seen that now. Even the mainstream media, in many cases I've seen where they admit all of these central banks are devaluing the currencies. This has become mainstream information. Of course, it's not front page news, but it is admitted. So let's go on to some more data right here talking about this. This is what I love to bring out every single chance I get. Every time I get a new piece of information like this, you're going to see it. And this is the French unemployed. At the same time, they're printing up their currency. Look at this, the French 10-year bond yield declining significantly and almost in an inverse proportion to the French unemployed. See, they're not helping out their own economy, these central banks, because in fact they do the opposite every time they print a dollar into circulation. They actually devalue the currency and hurt the individual more. It doesn't show up directly. That's why central banks can get away with this mess. That's why the politicians don't need to worry about it. And that's why the individual citizen will fight tooth and nail to deny that this could be happening. Their government that they voted in. Remember this, every time you vote in somebody, you're basically going to protect that person from any sort of bad mouth that some criticism that they might receive. This is what's happening. It's called the normalcy bias, and they will do anything that they can to protect them. Then we go one step further into what's called the Stockholm syndrome, and if, for those who don't know, essentially they'll actually fight for those who are holding them captive because they need to keep that belief system that everything is going to be okay. They don't want it to change. They're comfortable, so comfortable in fact, that even though they're being hurt, they're willing to believe that this person will help them eventually. This is this kind of sick behavior that has been going on right now. They are actually going ahead, these central banks are going ahead, printing up billions of dollars, giving it to all these banks around the world. We know specifically that they went out and they bought luxury homes with them, yachts with them. They use it for the CEO bonuses and so on and so forth. And then we have to sit here and listen to them tell us what they should do for the next crash to appear and what they're going to do. I believe that we should absolutely abolish all of this junk that is going on in the system. That's why they're pushing away from the bailouts and into the bail-ins, because they haven't been made aware of that yet, the general public that is. Let's go on right here. This is the USD versus the ruble, and we're looking at what essentially, first of all, that the ruble is being hurt by the price of crude oil declining, but there are other reasons for this as well. And other currencies around the world who do rely heavily on the price of oil are being hurt by its decline. That's pretty obvious. I mean, this happens throughout history as well. The reason I mention this is that what we had previously in this previous financial crisis, we had a massive decline in the price of crude down to approximately $35 a barrel, and you saw where the stock market went. It could certainly head in that same direction right now. The markets are not, I repeat, not prepared for such a decline. Now, this is a very important indicator of a struggling economy when you have the price of oil down significantly and they can't capitalize on that by making transportation cheaper and so on and so forth. That's the way it should work. It should be basically more beneficial to businesses to have oil being cheaper all down the line. Our food prices should decline. Gasoline prices should be declining dramatically, but of course, not going to happen. You saw it just a few years ago, and you're going to see this again if crude prices do decline, and they have declined very, very much over this recent times. This is something that isn't talked about enough, and I need to bring this out to you right here out of the AP. You have this Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott, who rose to power in large part by opposing a tax on greenhouse gas emissions. If you remember, previously you had Gillard going into a position saying we will never have the carbon tax. We will never have the carbon tax. Vote me in. We're never going to get that carbon tax. She gets put into power. Right away, they sign in the carbon tax. That's the way it works. You think for a second that you should believe anything that these politicians say, anything the bureaucrats say? And of course, people over and over and over again are swindled. They voted in Obama yet again, and they will believe anything. They think. I can't even believe that this is still happening. People still believe this, that there are two sides to a government. There's a Republican, there's a Democrat, there's a social conservatives. There's all these different names that they give them. They're all the exact same party. There's a one-party dictatorship. There isn't even a two-party dictatorship. They're all the exact same people. There is no different sides to it. They're all against liberty. They're all against freedom. They do not fight for individual liberties. It doesn't matter what side they're on. It's all fake. This is all, professional wrestling. This is all acting. This is a soap opera being played out in front of the public, and the fools are exactly that, fooled by it. I can't believe I have to sit here and listen to this in the mainstream media particularly, and then you hear it in public and conversations you have with other people, and they're thinking, well, I voted him in and I think he's going to do a great job this time around. He's not going to, that other bum that we had in power before, oh, he sucked. I hate those Republicans, and we'll get that Democrat in, and he's going to fix everything. He's saying that he's going to lower taxes and he's going to get businesses going and blah, blah, blah. You've heard it all before. It doesn't work like that. Look at what Gillard did in Australia. A direct 100% lie to the public. She got in. Now she's out, but take a look at this. So initially, Abbott gets in saying that, the carbon tax is gone. And right now, as far as I'm aware, there is no carbon tax in Australia, at least directly. Of course, in Canada, you can see how the carbon tax affects us here. But look at this. Is finding his country isolated like never before on climate change as the US and China, yeah, right, and other nations signal a new momentum for action. So they're supposedly pushing Australia, look guys, you better get onto this whole carbon tax thing. We don't want any pollution in the air. We can't handle this pollution in the air. You need to do your part. You need to impose a tax on people that is going to somehow prevent carbon emissions. And all it does is fund and fuel the businesses that are behind these carbon taxation schemes. Many have said that the Rothschilds are behind that. Let's not even go there. Let's just look at the fact that some people somewhere are benefiting from carbon taxes. And it isn't our individual governments, as they like to say all the time. It is not that at all. It is specifically businesses, corporations, these mega corporations that find themselves in control of all these governments. They are the ones making money. And here it is yet again, Australians. I know that I have many Australian subscribers. Look out for the carbon tax. Do not allow this to happen to your country yet again. I'm rambling. I need to move on very quickly. Here is this out of CNS News, an excellent website. Lots of information on here. And essentially what happened was they had the daily treasury statement talking about the amount of debt. And let's just show you this for a second. Here is the actual document. Remember, I always show you the actual documentation. I put it in the description below so you can search it out for yourself. So this is it right here, but it's a little messy to look at, very hard to see from the screen. I'm going to go back and just show you CNS News, where they said this: the U.S. Treasury has been forced to issue $1 trillion in new debt since fiscal 2015 started just 8 weeks ago in order to raise the money to pay off the Treasury securities that were maturing and cover new deficit spending by the government. 8 weeks, already $1 trillion in new debt. That's the way this system works. When I talk about debt collapsing the nations across the world, I consistently, and this is beyond all else, consistently have people say, it's manageable. What are you talking about? This debt is manageable. It's nothing. Don't worry. The U.S. can print the money. The U.S. has the petrodollar, and so on and so forth. But all of that is coming to an end right now, and then I'm showing you the actual statistics right from the government website, and yet you still have deniers. It is very, very sick to believe that they can't even look at the actual statistics and put two and two together. This is very simple. Let's look at this. Connected in with that, fight brewing over Social Security benefits for illegal immigrants. And President Obama said it's not amnesty. You can read the article for yourself, watch the video as well, but no need to watch this right here. You'd be better off watching what Mark Faber said is more informative, and that is Lady Gaga, because whatever he says is actually not real. Every time he says something, just like Gillard said only a few years ago, we know specifically it is the exact opposite. It is not the truth. So what is exactly the problem with Social Security? I got into it in my book. Let's just briefly cover that. After the real estate bubble crash in 2008, the U.S. government took on the two largest mortgage companies, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. They also bailed out countless companies by distributing multi-billion-dollar packages. And you can go into the unfunded liabilities, and this number, depending on what you include, I've seen many estimates going well over 100 trillion. That's right, over $100 trillion that the U.S. government owes. That is larger than the GDP of the entire world. This is an amount that can never be paid back. I've gone into this so many times, and of course there will be deniers, and those people will unfortunately be slaughtered, and that is just the way it goes. But see, the reason I mention this about the Social Security is that the government cannot handle any more. The government is already overburdened, and essentially what they've done is it's as if a person is drowning, and instead of handing them that life jacket, they're being handed a ball and chain, and then they will be sinking very, very fast. Let's look at this right here, how you have this great disparity that has been growing. I always talk about this, the rich getting rich, the poor getting poorer, and here it is. Art is no different. You could look at different sides of these statistics. I show you how the yacht sales are increasing, the big yachts that is, and then you look at the very, very high end of the cars, you look at the new home sales in Manhattan and other areas, and you see this as well. Art saying this, 76% of these, in the survey said collectors viewed art, at least in part, as an investment. They're getting into this very high-end level of artwork, and they're buying it up because they need their money in collectibles and real assets. They have the land, they have the real estate, they have their expensive cars already, so they want something that they can enjoy in a way, but also at the same time preserve value, and that's what they're doing, and they're doing it at a record rate right now. The actual rate is increasing over these past few years. So again, you have people who can't even afford to eat, and you look at the statistics, which I've covered here before, specifically shows you that even those who are struggling to make ends meet do not end up on the official poverty levels, and we would have such much higher levels if the government just told the truth. And you see this growing divide is just increasing every single year, and it's pretty bad, particularly since the financial crisis. And this is something that I just mentioned. I don't want to get into the details of the article. It's out of the Telegraph. It says this: as many as 13,000 people in Britain are being held in conditions of slavery, and it goes on into the details of that. But essentially the reason I mention this is because in a way we're all slaves to those in control of our society. There is no real freedom. In fact, I mean, just try not paying the taxes on your house property and see what will happen to that property. You will be kicked out very, very quickly. You're not actually in charge of your life. The governments are controlling everything, and as the years go on, they continue to increase the taxation upon us. That is in a way monetary slavery, and they continue to impose these laws. We go to the airports and they do these pat downs on us, losing our individual liberties. They're doing this at the bus stations, the train stations, and then it moves out onto the streets, and you look out in front of particularly 100 miles into the U.S. border from the south, you see there's checkpoints where people do not have their rights. You've seen the blood draws at these random checkpoints that have happened throughout the United States. And you look at even things that go deeper. You look at how all babies' blood, I've showed this before from the National Post in Canada, and it's been well documented in the US and other regions around the world, how blood has been taken from every baby at birth right here, used in quote-unquote research, but the people do not consent to this. We are losing all of our liberty. They're taking everything from us from every single angle. This is what's called full spectrum dominance. Now, this has been a very, very detailed video here. I hope that you enjoyed it. Please give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate that a lot. So I wanted to also get into the fact that if you need to reach me, the absolute best place to do so is on the insider's email or my other email, david@themoneygps.com. Sometimes it's just extremely hard to get back to people on things like Facebook and Twitter and the private messages through YouTube. I just often do not have a chance to reply back to those. It takes me up to a month in certain cases to reply to that. If you want to get me and really have a question for me, please just email me. I promise I will do my very best to get back to you within a day or 2 or 3. And this is very important to me. A lot of these people on these channels out here, they don't even reply to any of the comments that they do. They do not address their subscribers at all, but I feel that this is the exact opposite reason of why we should have a YouTube channel. That's why I have a YouTube channel, is to share this information with my subscribers. It has nothing to do with some sort of egotistical reason or monetary benefit or anything like that. I don't understand why there's a lot of these people out there who will not reply to the questions that their subscribers are asking. It's actually quite silly when I see this. So I hope that you will continue to ask me questions. I really appreciate it a lot. I'll do everything I can. I'll search as far and wide and as long as it takes to find the information that you guys need, you guys are requesting, and it will bring out future videos, future documents, and things that we need to learn more, to have that knowledge, because as they say, knowledge is power. That is very true. I certainly believe that. And that's it. I've rambled on enough for now, and I would hope that you will become an insider. The Insiders is where I give out all my best intel for free. That is available at themoneygps.com. Scroll down to the bottom, fill in your email address, and you get occasional emails from me with good, short, concise info.